What is up, everybody? Gannon here, back at it again with another one of my Star Trek reviews. You might have noticed that I've gotten a little bit more bronze, maybe even a little bit more sexier, and that's because I've been on vacation for the past 5 days. Luckily, I got back just in time to review the season finale of Strange New Worlds. Here we are, baby. This season finale was crazy, and I'm so excited to, just get into it. Last week's episode had pitted Pike and gang against Xenomorph Gorn as Strange New Worlds takes major liberties with their new modern depiction of the Gorn younglings. One so gruesome it almost makes you wonder how this species is ever going to maybe become a Federation member or ally in the future. Is that going to be possible? Are the Gorn going to become friendly in the future, or are they a species, an enemy that's worthy of total annihilation, or are they going to be kind of one of those planets that we never truly ever get along with completely, like the Orions? And then also, if the Gorn are going to be totally annihilated or if something really bad is going to happen to them, what does that mean for the Gorn wedding from Lower Decks? Okay, jokes aside, I don't think anybody really understands how canon Lower Decks is. Contrary to those who think that it's totally unacceptable to draw inspiration from other forms of media, I actually have no qualms with them making the Gorn infants so much like the Xenomorphs from Alien. What I did have a problem with, though, however, was them abruptly killing off one of the best and strongest characters they've created in all of Kurtzman Trek. After looking over hella comment sections and forums, I can tell you that at least 80% of people just totally don't like what they did with Hemry. They did my boy dirty. They did not need to Tasha Yar this fool, especially this quickly. I honestly want to make a video about how the weakest decision they've made with Strange New Worlds so far was to kill off that gold mine of a character known as Hemmer. But Hemmer's death putting me in my feels aside, Strange New Worlds has just been so much fun to review and watch. I've been waiting to see this show for 2 years now, and I'm seeing season 1 wrap up and come to a conclusion today, and it is quite the privilege. This season started off with Pike having a mental battle with himself over the knowledge of his eventual accident that will see him stripped of his ability to command and going to turn him basically into a vegetable that sits in a creepy space wheelchair. Now it's looking like the season finale will address how Pike is truly going to decide to use that knowledge. Will he remain on this path to inevitable destruction for the greater good of the timeline and the people he's going to save, or will newly found consequences steer Pike into making a different decision, thus totally changing Star Trek canon and the universe timeline drastically? Let's get into it. This episode was crazy. This episode was crazy. They did so much in this episode. It was super fun. You could tell from a mile away that this episode was grapefruiting the TOS. They were giving the TOS too much love in this episode. I have never seen them wank the TOS so hard, and honestly, I'm all here for it. This episode is beautiful in so many ways, and if you are a longtime Star Trek fan, especially one who appreciates the original series with Captain Kirk, you're probably gonna love this episode. But also, if you really love Captain Kirk like me, then you might have a couple things to say about Paul Wesley. Well, let's just get right into it. This episode starts off with Pike and his captain girlfriend Bay, Captain Baytel, chilling together eating some bootleg carbonara. He's clearly making a carbonara, except there's no smoky meat like bacon in it. It's just a cheap-ass carbonara. They're talking about how they're tasked with retrofitting the neutral zone outpost with new supplies. We learn that the name of her vessel is actually the USS Cayuga, which I don't think that was revealed in the first episode at all. I think that is new information. That's pretty cool. We also get a history lesson from Pike about the Romulans and about their relationship with the Federation, and to me, just off first impressions without having to do any Google searches, it just seems pretty accurate, and it was pretty sweet hearing Pike talk about the Romulans, and holy crap, do we get to see Romulans in this episode, because it really took me to around the 15-20 minute mark. This is literally the balance of terror. They took the balance of terror from the TOS and they just put Captain Pike in it, because, you know what, I'm just gonna get into it right now, because it happens around the midway point of this episode. Huge spoiler if you haven't actually seen the episode for yourself. Captain Kirk makes his appearance! Paul Wesley's Captain Captain Kirk shows up in this episode, because what this episode basically is about. Okay, what happens is they are going and they're retrofitting the neutral zone outpost with new tech, and they're talking to Commander Sala. Commander Sala is talking to Captain Pike about all the new goodies he's gonna get when his son walks in, and his son's like, oh, I love you, Captain Pike. I love Starfleet captains. I'm kind of like a fan of yours. He's clearly a fan. He starts asking him some questions, and Captain Pike's like, yo, you're one of those kids that's gonna die in this accident that I'm supposed to be in 7 years from now. So Captain Pike starts having these like mental qualms about, you know, the consequences that could happen if he decides to go through with what he's meant to do, what that stone on Borath told him to do. And so then he just kind of walks out after having a Vietnam flashback, and Una's like, yo, Captain, what are you gonna do? Or do something, right? And he's like, yeah, I guess I do have to do something. Captain Pike starts writing letters to all of the individuals that are going to be in the famous accident that has been foretold, that he's going to be reduced to the creepy space chair and it's going to be like the menagerie. He's writing letters to all of these young children telling them not to show up that day, when he is abruptly interrupted by himself. It's Captain Pike, but it's older Captain Pike. And I am so impressed with Anson Mount's ability to portray an older Captain Pike, like literally just playing the same character but older in a different timeline. He's just such a phenomenal actor that I just think that Captain Pike and Anson Mount's portrayal is super duper strong. It's almost like Captain Kirk showing up in today's episode made it so hard to compete with. Future Pike is wearing a Wrath of Khan era uniform. It just looks sensational, like everything in Strange New Worlds. It's got a little bit of, you know, that modern flair. It just looks insanely good, bro. It looks so good. I'm over here geeking because you guys know how much I love uniforms. I'm going too crazy because it's the season finale. What else would you expect from me? By this point in the episode, I'm already in love. I'm like super really in love. Pike from the future needs to prove himself to Captain Pike, so he recounts this story about how Pike's first horse was named Sir Naze-a-Lot, and that horse had to be put down, and it made Captain Pike cry for a very long time. Absolutely hilarious. Captain Pike is a very funny, non-serious captain, and I like how they've transformed him that way. Old Pike claims that he was sent by the Klingons on Borath, says he's here to stop a catastrophic event that will happen if Pike sends letters to all those cadets telling them not to be there on that fateful day. He then has Pike touch the time crystal, and he's transported to the Enterprise in the distant future. Here, Uhura is a lieutenant, and it seems as though the outposts on the border are being attacked by Romulans, and of course, you know, this is the moment when I'm like, yo, this is literally a balance of terror, because they reveal that Commander Sala is actually Commander Hassan Sala, and he is that dude literally from the TOS, from the Balance of Terror episode, when Captain Kirk receives the distress call, and he goes to check it out, and Commander Hassan is being bombed and just totally shot up by the Romulans, and he gives this little speech, which there are just a couple of voice lines that are just ripped away from Balance of Terror, because this is literally the same event. This episode is so freaking cool! The first thing that happens is Captain Pike is actually transported to like the shuttle bay, and he's doing a wedding ceremony for Angela Martine from the Balance of Terror episode, and her fiance, who, if you remember, like dies at the end of the episode, and it's one of the really hard-hitting things about that particular TOS episode. It's so great, dude, how much love they show in this episode. I just don't even know if I can get it all out, bro, how crazy this is. With the accident also seeming to happen 6.5 months or so into the future, it is revealed in this discussion that Captain Pike has with Spock. It really does seem like they're going to end this series with Pike's accident if we end up getting around 6 to 7 seasons, which is just really cool to know. After a mind meld, Spock comes to the conclusion that Pike has to do things as he normally would to find out exactly why this future is the bad one. He also kind of references Kirk in the scene, talking about how a different captain of the Enterprise is going to command it differently, and just, you know, like the events are going to change. In the original Balance of Terror episode, I'm pretty sure that it is Outpost 2, 3, and 4 that get destroyed, but in this episode, Commander Hassan is being quoted saying that it's like 2, 3, and 8, I'm pretty sure. So that's like, you know, one of the couple instances where I could say that there's like some legitimate contamination in this timeline. The USS Farragut shows up. It's here to help Captain Pike, and look who it is, baby! It's freaking Captain Kirk! We've known for a while that Captain Kirk's gonna come by in Strange New Worlds because they're actually really bad at producing modern television. They don't understand that you need to keep things secretive and you need to build up hype, similar to how like Star Wars does reveals. They're like a way bigger franchise who is able to keep Luke Skywalker and Cad Bane reveal from leaking to the public. But I've known that Captain Kirk is going to show up in the show for a while now. If I didn't have that information, I would probably be watching this episode and I would strip naked and I'd run out to the streets and be like, oh my god, Captain Kirk is back! Captain Kirk is back! But I've known about Paul Wesley for a while, and now that he's here, didn't expect to maybe see him on the season finale, but now here I am thinking like, okay, I'm gonna be slightly critical of Mr. Wesley here, because unfortunately, while Mr. Wesley has maybe the nuances of Captain Kirk's speech right, I have to say I am a little bit slightly disappointed. I don't know how you guys feel. The immersion level is just going a little bit down, and I realize that this is a young, cocky, less experienced version of Captain Kirk. But in this episode, I found that Paul Wesley sounds nothing like William Shatner. I'm sorry, Captain Kirk has a very distinct accent. You can just leave a lot of stuff up to, hey, this is a reboot. We're reimagining things. The Gorn are not going to be exactly how they were in the TOS. But something that you actually do have to get right is Captain Kirk has like an accent. Yeoman, calm down, yeoman. You know what I mean? Like, it's just been done so many times on SNL and everything, and it's a pretty difficult thing to do, and I imagine that in a modern show it might even seem a little bit goofy. I feel like if we ever do see Paul Wesley portraying an older Captain Kirk, that he needs to make some effort to get that Captain Kirk like confidence and that suave down. I'm pretty sure this is like 7 years in the future, and Captain Kirk is like the age where he takes over the Enterprise, except he's just like not captain of the Enterprise because Captain Pike never got injured by the accident. So it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. This isn't a younger Captain Kirk when you're thinking about it. This is an older Captain Kirk because this is 7 years in the future during Balance of Terror. So that kind of just makes it even a little bit more irky for me. I really liked Paul Wesley. The ending scene when him and Captain Pike are talking is absolutely beautiful. It's wholesome. But I just need Paul Wesley's performance, I guess, to improve. I just need to see a little bit more of Shatner in that Kirk. I'm a little bit disappointed by how little Shatner I'm seeing. So, you know, since this is the Balance of Terror after Outpost, I believe 4 gets totally destroyed after the Enterprise's arrival, then they find evidence of the Romulans, of course, by like hacking into their view screen and seeing inside their ship. And the Romulans actually look really good. The consoles look amazing. They're in the same shape and design of Balance of Terror. My only gripe is that, okay, I don't like we have Romulans in modern Star Trek. It's just like so much green and gray. Green and gray. And it's absolutely just combed everywhere. And I'm just getting massive Star Trek Picard vibes when I was looking at the bridge of the Romulans. Star Trek Picard takes place like over 100 years in the future. Like, the Romulans don't need to be this green and gray. The Romulan commander, while he did a great job at the end with that ending speech when he's about to be blown up, he did not really portray Mark Leonard all too well, and I totally understand. I can't have those expectations. Mark Leonard is a very peculiar and particular voice and way of acting, a very particular style. It's going to be very hard to replicate that. This Romulan commander, as much as I loved him, he did such a great job in this episode. He was definitely one of the top 3 strong points. It just didn't remind me of Mark Leonard like that much at all. We learn that in this alternate timeline, Una has actually been put into prison for her, you know, modified heritage, so she's nowhere to be found. Also, Lon is commander aboard the USS Farragut that Captain Kirk commands. This whole episode, Captain Kirk really does seem like the risk-taking young Kirk who's like really cocky and stubborn. There's only one point in this episode where Captain Kirk does something to make you like him. Like, honestly, he's a little bit annoying, and I feel like as an introduction to such a beloved character, it might be a little bit off-putting to some people. By the end of the episode, I was very much warming up to Paul Wesley, but you know, by the midpoint, you really have to say that they didn't make him super likable, and they almost just had him and Pike butting heads. Pike and Captain Kirk have to collaborate just in this contaminated timeline and do Balance of Terror together. This episode is so freaking cool. So they start to make their collaboration seem really interesting interesting when Captain Kirk actually stops seeming like a slightly unimpressive fool and finally does something. He takes a shuttle on his own and leaves the Enterprise. What he does is he goes and collects a bunch of automated mining ships, and he claims that, hey, Romulans don't know what the United Federation of Planet Fleet looks like, so I'm going to bring all these reinforcement ships to come and help out the Enterprise and actually help deal with the Romulans. Over on the Romulan ship, after there's been some communication between the commander and Captain Pike tries to do the peaceful solution the whole episode, which we learn is actually what's wrong with this timeline. Captain Pike is not supposed to be here being nice and friendly to the Romulans. He actually just appears weak to the Romulans, and that invites a whole load of other Romulans to show up. Captain Kirk is really supposed to be the jock here who takes the risk, who really understood the situation better and attacked the Romulans when he should have. Captain Pike is a little bit too soft and nice and wasn't supposed to be here at this point in the timeline. So this episode is truly just all about Captain Pike learning that if he attempts to change the timeline and if he attempts to make things right, to like avoid some consequences, time in the universe is not going to be nice to you. While you may not be getting hurt in that instance, it almost seems that injury, horrible stuff that's supposed to happen to you and maybe people that you know in that timeline, it's just going to be shifted onto others, and other people are going to have to bear that negativity and have their lives ruined. It's truly a no-win situation. Aboard the Romulan ship, like I said, Mark Leonard's commander character is super cool when one of the sub-commanders is like, yo, we need to attack the Enterprise. I don't trust them. They're being weak. And he's like, you listen to me. You're aboard my ship. And aboard my ship, there's no room for pride. We only think about what's real here. And if I need to take the 2 hours that this man gives me to repair my ship to get it back to Romulus, then that's what I'm gonna do. And you're not gonna tell me otherwise. That was such a sick scene. That was truly like, yo, that is a Star Trek bridge scene right there. That is so amazing. Then, of course, that doesn't really last for long because that sub-commander totally ignores him, defies orders, and contacts the rest of the fleet. Managed to show up within the next 2 hours, and then it is the big Romulan fleet versus Captain Pike and Captain Kirk with his army of really crappy robot mining ships. What ends up happening in this scene is that the rest of the Romulan fleet, including Praetor, who's like the leader of the entire fleet, she is a huge bitch. She is so mean. She is like whack to the 100%. She calls the original Romulan ship that was sent to destroy the outpost. Commander gives his amazing speech, the same one Mark Leonard gave in A Balance of Terror. And just like I said, they do that a couple times this episode. It's so good. It's great. Is the Romulan fleet at this point in time like really able to get to that point in the neutral zone within 2 hours? Are their ships that fast? Should only 24th century ships be able to do that? In the next generation, the commute between the neutral zone, just going over it, just even flying along it took a while, if you remember. So I just don't think that these little crappy mining ships in that entire Romulan fleet should have been able to get here that fast, but maybe some nerd can do some math for me and actually find out like what warp speeds they're going. By the way, there's a lot that happens in this episode. Like, it's an hour episode, so I'm sorry if I'm not being very fluent in the way that I summarize the events. The USS Farragut gets totally destroyed because Captain Pike is trying to be all nice. The Praetor just takes the advantage to start an entire Romulan war, opens fire on the Enterprise. The Enterprise is just barely able to get out alive, but in the process, Spock just gets totally blasted. It seems that Pike's injury has just pretty much been transferred to Spock since it didn't happen to Pike at that one point in the timeline 6 months previous to this. Spock just ended up getting the brunt of that injury himself. The really cool trippy shot at 51 minutes. Really dope cinematic. Pike is walking through the medical bay and there's a whole bunch of people just screaming in pain. There's even a couple ensigns carrying other members of the crew. It's a really, really great shot, I can't lie. And something that's cool about this timeline is that instead of Angela Martine's fiance dying, she dies and she's on the medical bed, and that's just a really cool note that only people who have actually seen A Balance of Terror would know. So this lets Captain Pike know that if he chooses to manually affect the timeline, that he won't be saving lives, just trading a few lives lost in exchange for ruining many others and giving the overall universe a worse outcome, like actually starting a Romulan war that's going to kill billions because he's not supposed to be here in this moment. Such a cool premise for this episode, and besides maybe like couple criticisms I have, it's so good. It really is so good. When Pike is kind of, you know, brought back to old Pike is holding a picture of him and the new Robert April, and they're wearing the pilot episode uniforms from the cage, like it looks exactly like them, and that means like literally confirming that the pilot episode outfits were canon in the timeline, and that's just so amazing. Like that is actually just that little picture right there that old Captain Pike was holding, enough to make a grown man cry. Also, at the end of this episode, Captain Pike just kind of confers with Captain Kirk a little bit in the alternate timeline, and Captain Kirk does confirm that he has a father known as George Kirk that served aboard the USS Kelvin. Now, that just kind of goes to tell me that in the prime timeline, the USS Kelvin existed and George Kirk existed. I do not think that like Chris Hemsworth in the USS Kelvin in those horrible J.J. Abrams movie, like they're talking about that guy, like they're the same person. I really don't believe that, but this is still cool nonetheless because it's new confirmed Kirk lore. Pike decides to delete the file, and yeah, that episode was a really fun one. Paul Wesley at this point is just an okay Kirk. I'm so sorry to say that. I'm slightly disappointed in myself. I want to know how the rest of you guys feel, because I just feel like Paul Wesley could do a little bit better. Uhura in the alternate timeline, if you could tell, she has an outfit that is so faithful to her TOS uniform, and she's talking way more like Uhura than she ever has before. Like she's really got that like whispery tone in her voice that she usually has, or at least Nichelle Nichols had at the comm stations. Captain, the Romulans are calling, you know what I mean? She was really talking like that in this episode, and I wish that Paul Wesley could make it more of an effort to do something like that. And then finally, I guess I would like to say my last criticism of this episode that was just kind of a real big plot hole is, I get that this is a contaminated timeline, but it really isn't that contaminated. This is just a continuation of the Enterprise 7 years later. I really don't understand why Captain Pike's crew is acting so weird in this episode. Like, it's a very huge plot hole. At the beginning, when Pike actually shows up to the new contaminated timeline, why is Spock kind of so hesitant to believe Captain Pike? Why does he have such a weird attitude, even as like, yo, is this one of what you humans call a practical joke? You know, at the end of the episode, Captain Pike and Spock have this beautiful moment where it almost seems like they're about to kiss or something, where Captain Pike's like, yo, Spock, you are really important to me. And Spock's like, yes, Chris, I understand that. I get it. It just goes to show you why Spock was so willing to betray Captain Kirk and commandeer the entire Enterprise in the Menagerie two-parter, is because he had such a crazy good relationship with Captain Pike. But how do you go from like that scene to just 7 years later with no real reason at all? Oh, Captain, I'm just kind of being a dick now. I don't believe you. Why are you talking like that? And then also there was that weird scene where Ortega's being an insubordinate. She raised her voice at Captain Pike, and I've seen Ortega's in what seems like almost more critical situations than this, and she's able to keep her cool way easier. There's no reason why she should be acting like that. If anything, after these 7 years, she should have more experience. Why would she raise her voice at Captain Pike like that and act like almost a different character? That did not make any sense to me. There was no reason that should have been the case. This episode gets an 8.5. For me, this is just a beautiful season finale. The only part that really kind of disappoints me is Paul Wesley. He could be better. I'm sorry, he could be better. His performance is not getting me as hyped as it should. Sorry, I had to come back and shoot this. Something I forgot to mention. At the end of the episode, we also had that crazy scene with Captain Batel coming aboard the Enterprise and actually taking Una into custody. And that little part of the timeline where she was imprisoned and not actually aboard the Enterprise when Captain Pike went and touched the time crystal actually is now coming to fruition and is seemingly going to become the starting storyline for next season. And it is just giving me mad Measure of a Man vibes. It was a really cool scene, by the way, because you could just see Captain Pike is pissed at Captain Batel for doing this. It almost seems like this is going to hurt their relationship irreparably. And then on top of that, he's so ready to square up with these like dork ass red shirts who are trying to take the commander of his ship off of his ship into custody, bro. Such a great ending scene. But yeah, definitely just wanted to mention that before I ended this review. There we go though, everybody. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1. That was so so fun. That was really a wild ride. I've been waiting for this show for so long, and it's just really cool to see it, you know, wrap up like that. Couple bumps in the road, but overall, this is definitely the strongest season of New Trek that we've gotten. It's by far just great new content, being bold. They're trying to do new awesome things, and I'm definitely here for it. With all that being said though, let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know what you guys think about the new Captain Kirk. Am I the odd one out? I need to see what other people think of Paul Wesley, because honestly, I am not that impressed at this stage. If you have anything that you would like to talk about, anything that I missed, leave it down in the comments below. I read every single comment that is left on my page. If you're enjoying any of the content that you see on the channel, I'd be ever so flattered if you're to subscribe. Once we get to 10K subscribers, I am going to dress up as a Star Trek Xenos and go and film myself out in public, probably harassing people or something. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and with all that being said, hope you guys have a good rest of your week. Live long and prosper.
Get out!